Imagine being handed, like an exact, meticulous blueprint for achieving literal heaven on earth.
Right, an actual manual.
Yeah, manual. It details where you need to go, exactly how you need to behave, the precise mindset you have to cultivate. It's basically a step-by-step guide to eternal bliss.
Which sounds amazing.
It does. But then right at the very end of this incredibly rigorous document, you are casually informed that it is physically impossible for you to follow it.
Yeah, that is quite the twist.
It really is. And today, we are looking at a text that does exactly that. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to explore a highly specific English-translated text from November 2023 by an author named Shu Feng. It's titled, How Far Are We from Heaven? And it presents this profound, totally paradoxical guide to living what they call a heavenly life.
And it is a remarkable piece of writing, mostly because it completely rejects the typical vague or mystical approach to spiritual ascension.
For sure.
There are no abstract platitudes here. Instead, the author lays out a very rigid, unyielding checklist for entering heaven. But, as you mentioned, the ultimate conclusion of the text just flips the entire premise on its head.
It totally does.
Yeah, it forces you to rethink what the checklist is actually designed to do in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to debate the rules of heaven, we really have to establish the setting.
Right, where is this all happening?
Exactly. The author argues that we have to bring the concept of heaven out of the clouds and down to the dirt. They write that even if you, the reader, deny the existence of a metaphysical or spiritual heaven, you cannot deny the existence of something called the second home of Lifechanyuan.
And the reason you can't deny it is because it is explicitly constructed as a physical, earthly replica.
Right here on Earth.
Exactly. It is quite literally a working model of the lowest level of heaven.
I love that phrasing, by the way. The lowest level of heaven. It's like playing a video game on tutorial mode.
Or a beta test.
Yeah. Being invited to a sandbox beta test for a massive new software launch. You get to play around with the basic mechanics of heaven in this highly controlled environment before you experience the full release.
That is a great way to look at it.
But it does make me wonder, does framing it as the lowest level make the concept of heaven feel more accessible? Or does it imply that there is this massive, incredibly intimidating hierarchy of spiritual achievement just looming above us?
What's fascinating here is how grounding an abstract concept into a tangible, earthly community fundamentally changes our relationship to spirituality.
How so?
Well, throughout history, in various traditions, heaven is definitively elsewhere, right?
Yeah, it's always up there somewhere.
Exactly. It's in another dimension, or it is strictly post-mortem. You
Mhm.
basically have to endure the suffering of this life, and then you die to collect your reward.
The classic delayed gratification.
Precisely. But by claiming that this second home is a functional prototype of heaven right now, the text completely removes the barrier of death. It places the burden of heavenly living squarely in the present moment. You don't get to wait.
You have to do it now. Which, going back to my question, means it does both things, right? It makes it accessible, but also intimidating.
It manages to do both simultaneously, yeah. By calling it the lowest level, it gives you a practical entry point. It says, start here, the door is open, you can practice this on Earth.
But then there's a hierarchy.
Right. You are absolutely right about the hierarchy. It implies a vast, staggering architecture of spiritual evolution that we can't even begin to comprehend yet.
Like we're just on the ground floor.
Exactly. It suggests that what we might consider the absolute ultimate pinnacle of human spiritual achievement is really just the ground floor of a much larger cosmic skyscraper.
Which naturally makes you ask, what is the access code to get into the lobby of that skyscraper?
The entry requirements.
Yes. If we have this beta test environment, this earthly replica, what do you actually need to do to get in? The author provides a list of conditions for truly living a heavenly life within this second home. But I have to point out the formatting of this list before we even read the contents.
Oh, it's so strange.
It is such a quirky detail. The author actually numbers the list completely out of order.
Yeah, the text explicitly lists them as condition 4, then condition 1, then condition 2, and finally condition 3.
It's so random.
And to add to the complexity, the author mentions later that there are actually 8 conditions in total, but they only provide these 4 for us to analyze.
Right, it's almost like we are stepping into the middle of a highly complex pre-existing system, like we're reading a fragment of a larger doctrine and are just expected to catch up.
We just have to piece it together.
So let's break down the conditions we do have, starting with the very first one listed, which is, amusingly, condition 4. It centers entirely on selflessness. The original Chinese term wugo is used, which translates to no self. To meet this condition, you must hold only God in your heart, your words and actions must align flawlessly with natural laws, and you must have absolutely no desires and no attachments.
And that concept of no self is the cornerstone of this entire philosophy.
It's intense.
Very. It implies the complete dissolution of the ego. It means you are no longer acting out of personal ambition, pride, or, any individual craving.
We're just empty.
Exactly. The text is demanding that you empty yourself out so completely that you become nothing more than a clear vessel for natural laws. Every decision you make isn't based on what you want because the you that wants things essentially ceases to exist.
Wow. Okay, that brings us to condition 1, which is the second one listed.
Naturally.
Naturally. This rule requires the individual to have, quote, abundant spiritual and mental wealth alongside sufficient merit. Now, this is an interesting pivot. Well, it takes the familiar human drive to accumulate wealth and completely internalizes it. But how does the text actually envision someone accumulating this merit? I mean, if you have no ego and no desires, like we just talked about, how are you building a spiritual portfolio?
That's a great question. In frameworks like this, merit isn't something you consciously collect like coins in a jar.
Right.
Because the very desire to collect merit would, ironically, be an ego-driven attachment.
Oh, I see. You'd be failing condition 4 by trying to achieve condition 1.
Exactly. Instead, merit is the natural byproduct of living without friction. When your actions align perfectly with the natural laws mentioned in condition 4, when you serve the community or exist in the world without leaving a footprint of selfishness, you generate spiritual wealth automatically.
It's just a symptom of your state of being.
Right. The merit is the proof that the ego has been dissolved.
So the merit is essentially a measurement of your emptiness. That actually makes a lot of sense. But then we hit condition 2.
Here we go.
And this is where the strictness of this blueprint really starts to show its teeth. You have to live in harmony with like-minded people.
Which sounds great on the surface.
On the surface, that sounds lovely. But the standard for this harmony is absolute. Strictly, no complaining, no nitpicking, no blaming, and no demanding. None. Zero tolerance.
Complete interpersonal frictionlessness.
And condition 3 pairs right with it, which asks for a life insulated entirely from worry, sorrow, fear, and pain. A life consisting only of joy, happiness, freedom, and bliss.
I can hear you gearing up to argue this.
I have to. I have to push back on this because it feels entirely disconnected from reality. Let's look at condition 2. No complaining or nitpicking at all.
Not a single complaint.
But isn't venting a core mechanism for how humans process stress and bond with each other? I mean, if you endure a difficult situation and you complain about it to a friend, that shared frustration is basically the social glue of the human experience.
Yeah, absolutely is.
And then condition 3, complete insulation from sorrow. If you live in a physical body, you will experience physical pain. If you love another person, you will feel sorrow if they are hurt. A life completely void of fear and sorrow just doesn't sound possible.
You've isolated the central tension of the entire document right there.
Like, it just seems absurd.
The demands seem not just difficult, but physically and psychologically impossible. But if we look closely at how the author constructs these rules, we can kind of see the underlying mechanism.
Okay, wait on me.
The text views the internal state of a person and the external environment they inhabit as entirely codependent mirrors of one another.
Wait, are you saying that the complaining is actually just a symptom of the ego?
Yes.
Like, if I have achieved that first rule of having no self and zero attachments to how things should be, I literally cannot be offended, and therefore I have nothing to complain about.
That is the exact logic the author is deploying. Why do we complain?
Because we're annoyed.
Right. But why are we annoyed? We complain because our personal desires, our ego, are not being met by reality. We want a situation to unfold a certain way, it doesn't, and the friction between our desire and reality produces a complaint.
Ah, I get it now.
If you have truly achieved wuwo, if you have no attachments, you simply accept reality as it presents itself. There is no friction, therefore there is no blaming and no nitpicking.
Because there's no you to be bothered by it.
Exactly. The external harmony of the second home is just the collective reflection of the absolute internal emptiness of the individuals living there.
Okay, that is a profound way to look at it. The rules of the community are essentially designed to force your ego out of hiding.
Yes, you can't fake your way through this.
You really can't. You
No.
can't just bite your tongue, suppress your annoyance, and pretend you aren't bothered by a minor inconvenience.
Right.
If you are harboring annoyance internally, you still have an ego, which means you haven't actually met the conditions.
Precisely. Suppression is not the same as dissolution.
That's a great distinction.
If you are suppressing a complaint, the complaint still exists within you. The text demands that the complaint never forms in the first place.
But if the margin for error is literally zero,
Mm-hmm.
what happens when we inevitably slip up? Because no one can sustain that level of ego death perfectly. Is there like a grading curve in this second home?
The author actually provides a very strict empirical criteria for tracking your progress. They know how demanding this is, and they have developed a spiritual grading scale to tell you exactly where you stand.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the author spells out the consequences based on your score.
They don't hold back.
They really don't.
Yeah.
If you possess all of these conditions perfectly, you are, quote, actually living in heaven, experiencing bliss every single moment. But what if you mostly meet these conditions? The author categorizes you as being merely on the edge of heaven.
It's a very evocative phrase.
I love this visual. It's like a ruthless spiritual credit score or a VIP club door policy. If you are on the edge, are you just standing outside the velvet rope, looking into the second home, watching everyone else exist in perfect harmony while you hold on to one last tiny complaint?
It's a compelling, almost tragic visual, honestly. Being on the edge implies you have done incredible internal work. You have achieved a massive degree of harmony, you have accumulated significant spiritual wealth, but you have one lingering attachment holding you back.
Just one little thing.
Right. Maybe it's a tiny sliver of pride or a quiet fear of the future. You are close enough to feel the warmth of the fire, but you are not allowed inside the room because that single flaw would disrupt the perfect frequency of the space.
Wow. And the grading scale gets harsher. The text states that if you lack any of the conditions, and remember, there are 8 in total, even though we only know 4 reaching heaven is extremely difficult.
Extremely difficult.
And if you meet none of them, the author doesn't sugarcoat it. They say, do not expect to reach heaven in this lifetime. You must seriously cultivate for the next life or the one after that.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that mention of the next life is crucial.
Yeah, that really stood out.
It completely shifts the cosmological framework of the text. It assumes a cycle of reincarnation, and that drastically alters the emotional weight of everything we've just discussed.
How does it alter it? Because honestly, being told to try again in the next life just sounds like failing a massive exam so badly that you are forced to repeat the entire grade from scratch. It sounds exhausting.
It can sound that way to a modern sensibility for sure, but consider the alternative.
Okay.
Think about the immense crushing pressure of having to achieve total ego death, absolute harmony, and the complete eradication of sorrow within the roughly 80 years of a single human lifespan.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
If you only had one life to get this perfectly right, you would be paralyzed by anxiety. Every single time you felt a flicker of annoyance, you would feel profound despair because you just failed your one chance at heaven.
I see what you mean. The anxiety of trying to be perfectly fearless would actually create more fear. It's a complete paradox.
Exactly. But by introducing the deep, epical timeline of reincarnation, the next life or the one after that, the text provides a massive release valve for that pressure.
It gives you time.
Yes, it acknowledges that dissolving the self is not a weekend project, it is the work of millennia. If you meet none of the conditions today, that is simply an honest assessment of your current coordinates on a much longer journey. The goal shifts from crossing the finish line before you die to simply ensuring your trajectory is pointed toward the second home across multiple lifetimes.
That is a much more forgiving perspective. It frames the failure not as a punishment, but as just a necessary phase of long-term cultivation.
Exactly.
But honestly, even if you give me 10,000 lifetimes to practice, giving up all attachments, completely insulating myself from fear, never feeling a single moment of sorrow.
It's a lot.
It feels like trying to install a massive, next-generation operating system onto a 10-year-old smartphone.
That's a great analogy.
But the hardware just isn't built to run it. It feels fundamentally opposed to the way a human being is wired.
And your deduction right there brings us to the final brilliant twist of the source text.
Yes. Let's talk about the twist.
Because the author anticipates exactly what you are feeling right now. They know the hardware is incompatible.
Because everything we have discussed so far, The physical replica of the second home, the 4 intensely strict conditions, the rigorous grading scale. It all reads like a very demanding manual for becoming a highly enlightened human.
Right.
But then we reach the very last paragraph of the text. The author poses this rhetorical question. Perhaps you think that as humans we cannot meet the above conditions.
And then the author answers their own question with absolute bluntness. They state, and indeed, humans cannot achieve them.
I mean, what does this all mean? The author hands us this meticulous blueprint for living heaven on earth, establishes a physical location for it, grades us on our ability to follow the rules, tells us to practice for multiple lifetimes, and then casually admits that humans physically cannot do it.
It's wild, isn't it?
It feels like we were set up to fail from page 1.
It's not a setup. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
The author follows that admission with the true thesis of the entire document. They say, therefore, we must cultivate to become celestial beings.
That single sentence recontextualizes the entire deep dive.
It reveals that we have been misreading the blueprint all along.
It changes everything. It means the goal of this text was never to teach us how to be really good humans.
Right. The text is arguing that human and heavenly are mutually exclusive categories. You cannot carry your human nature, your ego, your tendency to bond over complaints, your capacity for sorrow, into the second home of Lifechanyuan.
Because the hardware of humanity is designed to experience those frictions.
Exactly. Therefore, the 8 conditions are not behavioral guidelines for a peaceful earthly commune. They are the catalyst for an evolutionary leap.
It's like a caterpillar reading an instruction manual on how to fly.
Oh, I like that.
The caterpillar looks at the aerodynamic diagrams and says, I don't have wings, I have legs, I physically cannot do this. And the manual replies, correct, you cannot do this, you have to build the chrysalis first.
That is the perfect analogy.
The rules aren't meant to be followed by the caterpillar, they're the blueprint for the chrysalis.
Yes, the rigorous, impossible demands of the text, the zero tolerance for nitpicking, the absolute dissolution of the self that is the restrictive environment of the cocoon.
It breaks you down.
It is specifically designed to break down the human form. By striving to meet these impossible conditions, you are intentionally creating the friction necessary to shed your human skin. You are actively attempting to evolve beyond the species entirely, to emerge as something fundamentally different.
A celestial being.
A celestial being.
Which means the second home isn't just a peaceful replica of heaven. It is a laboratory for metaphysical metamorphosis.
Exactly.
It is a designated space where individuals go to purposefully dismantle their humanity. It's breathtakingly ambitious when you look at it through that lens.
And it explains why the grading scale is so unforgiving, you know? There are no half measures in metamorphosis. You cannot be 70% butterfly and 30% caterpillar.
Right. You can't be just a little bit celestial and a little bit human.
That is why those who mostly meet the conditions are stuck on the edge. They have begun the transformation, but they refuse to let go of the final threads of their human identity.
Wow, we have covered so much conceptual ground today.
We really have.
We started by exploring this earthly prototype, the second home of Lifechanyuan, which brings the demands of heaven into the immediate present. We examined the intensely rigorous checklist of conditions, dissolving the ego into natural laws, generating merit through selflessness, maintaining absolute harmony without a single complaint, and existing completely free of sorrow.
All impossible for a human.
Right. And we looked at how the timeline of reincarnation relieves the pressure of perfection while holding us accountable on that brutal spiritual grading scale.
Yeah.
And finally, we uncovered the ultimate paradox of the text, that this blueprint is impossible for humans to follow because it is actually the instruction manual for evolving into a celestial being.
It takes the reader on a profound journey in just a few pages. It moves from what looks like practical, communal rulemaking straight into the mechanics of metaphysical evolution.
So, to you listening to this deep dive right now, I want you to think about your own internal hardware.
Yeah, think about it.
If you were standing at the edge of heaven, trying to move past that velvet rope, what is the one human attachment that would be the absolute hardest for you to let go of? Is it a seemingly harmless habit, like venting about your day to feel connected to someone else?
Or a specific desire you hold tightly to.
Yeah. Or is this simply the ego itself, that deep-seated need to be recognized and validated as you?
This raises an important question to linger on. If entering the lowest level of heaven requires us to systematically break down our human flaws, our attachments, our desires, and even our capacity to feel sorrow, Does achieving perfect eternal bliss ultimately mean we have to stop being ourselves entirely?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.